Dark chosen ones, 3 signs your time in the shadows is almost over. There are seasons of the soul where nothing makes sense, where the deeper you go into yourself, the more invisible you become to the world, where everything you thought you were turns to dust, and the silence is so thick it hums like a presence. If you're watching this, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been in the shadows, not just for weeks or months, but for what feels like lifetimes. You've watched others rise, find clarity, fall in love with their path, while you've been left behind, like a forgotten page in a sacred book. But the truth is, you were never forgotten, you were hidden, and not by accident. You were hidden because you are a dark chosen one, and your time in the shadows has been your training ground. What you've been through wasn't a delay, it was divine design. And now, something deep within you is beginning to move. A stirring, a whisper, a shift. You can feel it, can't you? That's strange, knowing that something is about to end, or maybe finally begin, because there are signs, unmistakable signs, that your time in the shadows is almost over, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. The first sign is subtle, but undeniable. You no longer crave what you once begged for. There was a time you would have sold your soul for recognition, love, attention, approval. You would have done anything to be seen, to be understood, to be held in the light with others. But now you feel strangely empty when those things show up. The compliments don't hit like they used to. The validation doesn't fill the void. The applause sounds hollow. That's not you becoming numb. That's you becoming free. Because the shadow wasn't punishing you, it was purifying you. It was burning away the parts of you that were addicted to being needed. It was teaching you to live without the performance, without the mask, without the external mirror. And now that you've learned how to stand on nothing but your own presence, God is preparing to put you in places where your light won't blind you, where your power won't poison you, where your voice won't betray your heart.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But here's where it gets deeper. A second sign begins to emerge, and it hits you like a thunderstorm in the middle of a quiet night. You start to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Not as nostalgia, not as fantasy, but as embodied knowing. You begin to recall dreams you had as a child, visions, gifts, obsessions that you buried because no one understood them. You begin to notice that your intuition is sharper than ever. You walk into a room and you feel the truth before anyone speaks. You touch something and it vibrates with memory. You speak and your words carry a weight that even surprises you. This is not your imagination. This is your soul remembering. It's been dormant, locked in the basement of survival. But now it's waking up. And with it comes a strange kind of pressure, not from the outside, from within. Like something ancient is knocking on the walls of your being, saying, it's time. And yet, even as this awakening unfolds, the third sign arrives, and it's the hardest one to accept. You begin to lose people. Again, but this time it doesn't hurt like before. It feels necessary. I'm talking about the friends you've outgrown, the mentors who no longer resonate, the communities that once felt like home, but now feel like cages. You don't leave them with anger, you leave them with peace. Because you realize something profound. The more you become who you truly are, the less space there is for who you used to be. And that version of you had relationships that were never meant to survive your evolution. And now, instead of clinging, you practice surrender. Instead of explaining, you practice silence. Instead of chasing, you practice trust. Because you know that those who are meant for your next chapter will find you without force, without noise, without compromise. So I ask you now, deeply, sincerely, have you mistaken your shadow season for abandonment when it was actually protection? Have you been trying to break out of a spiritual cocoon before your wings were fully formed? Because what if the universe hasn't been ignoring you, but preparing to reveal you in a way that can't be undone? What if everything you called delay was actually alignment waiting for your readiness? What if the silence you've lived in was the exact frequency you needed to hear your soul for the first time? You see, the dark chosen ones don't rise like everyone else. We don't get the spotlight first. We get solitude. We don't get applause first. We get pruning. We don't get ease. We get intensity. Why? Because we carry codes that disrupt, awaken, transform. And those codes can't be activated in comfort, they are born in crucifixion. You had to lose everything to find the one thing that couldn't be taken you. Not the version you put online. Not the version your parents wanted. Not the version your trauma created. But the version that has been waiting in the silence, watching, growing, becoming. And now she's ready. He's ready. You're ready. Let that settle in. Let it burn. Because you will not be able to return to the shadows the same. The old cave will no longer fit. The old stories will no longer soothe. The old masks will fall off on their own. You are being called to walk out not with noise but with knowing, not with performance but with presence, not with proof but with peace. And the world will ask, where have you been? And your soul will answer, I've been in the dark learning how to carry the light. The sacred disruption, why everything is falling apart right before your rise. There is a moment in every chosen one's life when everything collapses at once. Relationships dissolve without warning, careers vanish like smoke, health declines, and the very ground beneath your feet seems to shatter. It feels personal. It feels cruel. It feels like a divine betrayal. But what if I told you that this collapse isn't an ending? What if it's a sacred disruption, an earthquake of purpose, sent not to punish you, but to prepare you for what's next? You see, we've been taught that when things fall apart, it means we've done something wrong. But for the dark chosen ones, the opposite is often true. When your life begins to unravel, it's usually because you're finally aligned with the truth of who you are. And the universe, in its infinite intelligence, cannot allow anything false to remain standing around the truth. You've probably felt it already, that eerie sensation that things are falling away faster than you can hold on. People you thought would be in your life forever are suddenly gone. Projects you poured your heart into hit a wall. You wake up feeling like a stranger in your own life, like you're watching a movie you didn't choose to star in. This is the sacred disruption. This is the moment where God says, you are too powerful to keep living in this illusion. And so, He begins tearing down every structure that was built on fear, compromise, ego, and survival. Not because He wants to harm you, but because those structures can't carry the weight of your destiny. This is the paradox of awakening. The more aligned you become with your soul, the more violently the old life resists. You start to vibrate at a different frequency, and suddenly everything that's not in resonance begins to crack. It's not sabotage, it's spiritual physics. Two incompatible frequencies cannot coexist in the same field for long. So the universe chooses, and it always chooses truth. That's why things feel like they're breaking. They're actually being restructured from the inside out. And yes, it's painful. It's disorienting. It feels like death. But it's the death of the false self, the death of the mask, the death of the version of you that was built to survive, not to soar. If you've been living in the sacred disruption, you probably feel like you've lost control. And that's exactly the point. Control is the illusion. Surrender is the truth. The dark chosen ones are not here to control outcomes. We're here to surrender to divine orchestration. We are not here to manipulate energy. We are here to embody it. And that requires us to trust the chaos, to trust the falling, to trust that what is being taken was never really ours. And what is meant to stay will remain effortlessly without struggle, without begging, without fear. But here's the deeper layer. The sacred disruption doesn't just take things away. It also reveals. It reveals who you really are when you have nothing to hide behind. It reveals the strength you forgot you had. It reveals the faith you didn't know was quietly growing in the cracks of your brokenness. It reveals the voice within you that no longer needs permission to speak. And most of all, it reveals what's truly real. Because in the ruins of what you thought was your life, you begin to see the sacred architecture of your true path. It was always there beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the fear. You just couldn't see it until everything else was stripped away. So I ask you now, not as a guru or a guide, but as a fellow wanderer of the shadows, what are you still trying to hold together that God is asking you to let fall apart? What illusion are you still worshipping because you're afraid of the unknown that follows? Because here's the truth, the unknown is not empty. It's full of everything your soul has been praying for. But to receive it, you must make space. You must be willing to stand in the ashes with your heart open and your hands empty. Only then can the new life begin to take root. The sacred disruption is not the end of your story. It's the cracking open of your shell. You are not being destroyed. You are being revealed. You are not being punished. You are being purified. You are not being abandoned. You are being positioned. And soon, when the dust settles and the silence deepens, you will realize that what you lost was never your foundation. It was your cage. And now, finally, you are free. The inner roar, how your energy begins to shift when the shadow season ends. There's a moment, and you'll feel it before you fully understand it, when the silence inside you begins to turn into sound, not a scream, not even a whisper, but a subtle, powerful roar rising from the deepest part of your being. It's the moment your soul starts to stir after a long winter in the shadows. You spent so much time surviving, healing, unraveling, questioning, doubting. But now, something is different. You wake up and there's no panic. You speak and you don't second-guess your voice. You move and it feels like alignment, not resistance. This is what it looks like when the shadow season begins to end. Not with fanfare, not with fireworks, but with a quiet shift in your energy that tells the universe, I remember who I am. You won't need anyone to validate it. You won't even feel the urge to announce it. That's how you'll know it's real. When your inner world begins to settle, when your nervous system starts to breathe again, when your thoughts aren't at war with each other, that's when you'll know the tide is turning. And instead of seeking the light, you realize you become it. Not the polished, filtered kind of light that's performative and pleasing, but the raw, grounded, unshakable kind of light that comes from having sat in your own darkness and made peace with it. This shift in energy is not always dramatic, but it is undeniable. You'll find yourself walking into spaces you used to feel small in, and now you occupy them with quiet confidence. You'll speak truths you once withheld, not to convince anyone, but because your truth no longer fits behind your teeth. You'll feel your presence expanding, not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer shrinking. You'll notice that the people who once intimidated you now seem human. The dreams that once felt too big now feel inevitable. The fears that once paralyzed you now feel like echoes from someone else's life. This is the roar. It's the silent power of someone who has died and come back to life spiritually, emotionally, energetically. And no one can teach you this. You have to earn it. Through every breakdown, every dark night, every tear you shed alone when no one was watching, you start to recognize the divine timing of everything. The betrayals, the delays, the rejections, they all begin to make sense. You realize that what you thought was a punishment was actually a pivot. That what felt like abandonment was just redirection. That every loss was a clearing, not to empty you, but to make space for what was truly meant for you. And once you see that, you stop fighting life. You stop trying to force outcomes. You start flowing, not in a passive way, but in a deeply empowered way. You stop swimming against the current of your own becoming. There's also this beautiful, almost indescribable moment when you realize you are no longer triggered by the same things. Someone says something that used to make your blood boil, and now you feel compassion. You revisit a memory that once tore you apart, and now it feels like a chapter from a book you've outgrown. You realize you don't need closure from people who hurt you because you've already given it to yourself. That's what spiritual sovereignty looks like. That's the roar that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. And you'll notice the world responds to this shift. People start treating you differently. Opportunities begin to show up without you chasing them. Synchronicities increase. The right words come at the right time. The right people appear when you least expect them. It's as if the universe has been waiting for you to come home to yourself before it could deliver what was always meant for you. Because that's the secret. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you are being. And when you start being the version of yourself you were always meant to be, before the pain, before the masks, before the fear, that's when life begins to align. So I ask you now, deeply, can you feel the shift? Can you sense that something inside you is no longer willing to stay hidden, silent, or small? That's not ego. That's emergence. That's the roar of your soul. And it's not asking for permission anymore. It's not waiting for the perfect moment. It's rising now in real time. Your energy is speaking even when your mouth is closed. Your presence is leading even before you say a word. And that's what the end of a shadow season looks like. It's not always external success. It's internal alignment. It's peace where there was once war. It's clarity where there was once confusion. It's power where there was once pain. You don't have to force your rise. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to stay present with the version of you that's finally coming alive. And that version of you, that version doesn't play small. That version doesn't apologize for existing. That version doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. That version walks through the world as a mirror, a reminder, a revolution in human form. That version is the roar, and the world needs to hear it. The emergence, how to step fully into the life that's been waiting for you. There comes a moment when the silence breaks, not because it's shattered by noise, but because it transforms into clarity. The fog lifts, the weight eases, the patterns that once kept you stuck begin to dissolve. And there, standing in the stillness, is the version of you that was always meant to emerge. Not a fantasy, not a future self, but the real you. The you that has been buried beneath survival mode, self-doubt, and spiritual amnesia. And now, that version is no longer content with waiting. It's ready to live, ready to lead, ready to become. But emergence is not a performance. It's not about stepping onto a stage and declaring your transformation to the world. It's about stepping into alignment so fully that the world adjusts around you. It's about choosing every day to no longer wear the skin of your former self. It's about walking in rooms differently, not louder, not flashier, but with a presence that says, I no longer betray myself to be accepted. That's what emergence really is, the end of self-abandonment. And when that ends, everything else begins. The life that's been waiting for you isn't somewhere out there. It's been orbiting you for a long time, waiting for a signal that you're finally ready to receive it. And that signal isn't hustle, grind, or proving your worth. The signal is embodiment. When you live from your truth, your life rearranges itself to match that frequency. That's why things begin to accelerate once you align. The people you need find you. The opportunities flow. The clarity sharpens. The synchronicities multiply. Because you're no longer sending mixed signals to the universe. You're no longer asking for a new life while clinging to your old identity. You're finally in energetic agreement with your destiny. But let me be real with you, emergence isn't always graceful. You'll still have moments of fear. You'll still question whether you're doing it right. You'll still feel the pull of your old life, your old habits, your old comfort zones. That's normal. The difference now is that you don't live there anymore. You don't belong to the pain. You don't identify with the wound. You don't worship your limitations. You remember that you're not here to play small, blend in, or survive. You're here to embody, to illuminate, to disrupt. So what does it look like to truly step into the life that's been waiting for you? It looks like saying yes to what scares you. It looks like setting boundaries that feel like betrayals to others, but are acts of devotion to yourself. It looks like being so honest with yourself that you can no longer tolerate anything that dishonors your soul. It looks like taking the leap without a fallback plan, not because you're reckless, but because you trust the net will appear. It looks like showing up as the version of you that your inner child always dreamed you would become. And here's the wild part, you don't have to do as much as you think. Emergence is less about effort and more about resonance. You don't chase what's yours, you align with it. You don't beg for love, purpose, or peace. You become the kind of person who naturally attracts those things. And the moment you stop performing and start embodying, you realize, I was never waiting for life to begin. Life was waiting for me to show up, fully, authentically, unapologetically. So I ask you now, with every fiber of your being, are you willing to stop hiding? Are you willing to stop negotiating your worth? Are you finally ready to step into the life that's been circling you like a hawk, waiting for you to say yes? This isn't just about you. When you rise, you become a mirror for others. When you emerge, others remember they can too. When you live your truth, you create a new permission slip for the collective. That's the ripple effect of a dark chosen one who decides to stop shrinking and start shining. This is your time, not because someone gave it to you, but because you claimed it. You earned it in the fire. You forged it in the silence. You bled for it in the dark. And now, the shadows are behind you not because they're gone, but because you've made peace with them. You've integrated your power. You've come home to yourself. And from this place, anything is possible. Walk forward, not as someone who is trying to become, but as someone who already is. You're not rising. You've already risen,